Longer wait for buyers of 5 BTO projects.
Buyers will now have to wait up to 3 months longer.
Further delays to projects after a recent surge in COVID-19 cases.
I know you're going to ask me lots of questions. Okay, sure. Let's go.
It started out with a phone call. Minister Gan Kim Yong called me and said, so we're going to form a team. PM asked you to come on board because it had a direct and serious effect on the built environment sector, including HDB.
Public housing, never delayed. We always delivered on time. This pandemic basically disrupted everything.
Suddenly, all your projects is totally stopped. I was leading very badly from day one.
It's the first time that we have delivered projects past the legal completion date.
People had made their life plans on the basis of when they would get their homes. What would happen? Can we continue to build? Can we deliver public housing?
The final 2 HDB projects delayed due to the pandemic have been completed.
We are here at Punggol Point Cove. This is one of the 2 final HDB BTO projects affected by the pandemic. Now, for many of us, COVID would have been some years ago, but this is actually long COVID for the construction sector. Unprecedented work closures, impact to supply chain, impact to work processes, shortage of manpower, escalating costs. It's been a very long journey.
But this project is Woodleigh Glen. We designed and built it. It's very special because we put in a lot of effort to make a very interesting project in this new town of Bidadari.
Public housing, never delayed. We always delivered on time, if not a little ahead of schedule. At that point, it was about 3.5 years waiting time for flats, from application to delivery, and we were aiming to bring it down further. So things were chugging along quite well, I would say.
BTO demand had come down quite significantly from the highs of 2013 demand, to the extent that we could do a few things. One was to move to allow singles to buy BTO. And we were confident in 2018 to announce the rollout of shorter waiting time flats. Of course, COVID, all of that unraveled.
When Bidadari was in the middle of construction, we had COVID. I remember that it was the 3rd day of Chinese New Year in Singapore and we were all celebrating. But I recall I was watching TV about this new disease that was taking place in China, Wuhan.
Top story, the first confirmed case of the Wuhan virus here in Singapore. It's a 66-year-old Chinese national from Wuhan.
But immediately within a few days, the first cases were already detected in Singapore.
We thought it's going to be a virus that can be controlled within a short time. So no one take it actually seriously.
Singapore has seen its first local transmissions of the coronavirus.
Case 108 is a 34.
Total number of cases here now to 200.
We start worrying in the month of March. It's been spreading not just in Singapore, in China, but also in Malaysia. We get very concerned about the logistic issues.
So in the context of the residential units, HDB actually produces about 77.7% of the total number of residential units in Singapore. So Singapore, we are very small and we don't have a lot of space to produce everything ourselves. So we have to rely on imports of materials and also on manpower from overseas.
The first blow was when Malaysia imposed the MCO, the Movement Control Order. And the MCO was Malaysia's way of limiting movement between the borders so that they will minimize infection spread within Malaysia.
For BTO projects, during the construction of the superstructure, the building itself, Most of the components, like precast, come from Malaysia.
It meant that all these precast components cannot be brought into Singapore.
Without a precast component, you cannot continue the building works.
I was a project director. I was managing this Project E at Choa Chu Kang. When Malaysia announced, I stopped the construction. Even with the stockpile I currently had at Keat Hong Verge was insufficient to sustain the progress of the site.
Well, the immediate thought is, what's the plan B?
HDB immediately activated its contractors to find out how much supply they had. MTI, of course, at that point had its border group that was working with their counterpart.
We tried to approach the Malaysians to allow an exception for these precast units to be brought into Singapore. And fortunately, the Ministry of Transport in Malaysia subsequently said that they will allow trucks to come in through the causeway from the 27th of March to the 29th of March. We scrambled whatever we could with the manufacturers in Malaysia, and we brought in 300 truckloads of precast components.
Malaysia's Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin has announced new economic measures, saying the country may need to extend its partial lockdown for another 2 weeks.
But when Malaysia announced the extension of this MCO, the subsequent extension, I do not have enough stock for that. It's already depleted for the first 2 weeks of the first announced MCO, and there's no way of getting it from Malaysia at that point in time.
It wasn't just MCO. The pandemic basically shut global supply chains down.
So for construction projects, most of the construction materials and construction accessories are imported from Malaysia, from China, and other countries around ASEAN.
For example, concrete is made from sand and cement. There's a various source of supply from Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines. So, we are trying to solve the supply of the logistics. We were not expecting to experience dormitory being locked down.
Singapore confirms another 35 new cases of COVID-19 today.
Construction firms here in Singapore are expecting further delays to projects after a recent surge in COVID-19 cases in the dormitories.
Immediate thought was, wow, the impact on construction would be significant because we are very reliant on our guest workers to build in Singapore. Can we continue to build? Can we deliver public housing?
The workers in the dormitories were locked down, and essentially no work was done or could be done.
With no workers, no matter how well you plan, you can't execute at all. I think came straight to my point is, I don't think I can hand over the project on time.
The number of new cases daily has begun to rise. We will therefore impose significantly stricter measures. This is like a circuit breaker.
The next blow was the circuit breaker. So BTO projects all had to stop work on that day. Even with the circuit breaker, clusters of infection were breaking out in the worker dorms, and the worker dorms housed thousands of workers.
It was certainly not the decision that was made lightly because we've never shut down the entire construction in this scale before. We knew the enormity of the decision, the seriousness of the impact. We had to do the unthinkable because lives came first.
We know that a consequence would be delays in construction projects. The key focus of all the government agencies were on how to ensure we contain the situation so that you don't flood the public health system with outbreak after outbreaks. We know there will be delays, but you have to focus on what's important at that point.
As a business owner of a construction company, it's super painful. We start to look at what are the potential impact, like costs. We have projects that have crane. In one particular project, we have 6 cranes that is idling. One crane, the rental is 100,000 a month. 6 cranes is 600,000. So the numbers are in the multiple of millions, not hundreds of thousands. Due to our size of our projects,
We still had to pay the cost of the workers, the staff, and also all those equipments, machineries, like tower crane itself. All these payments are still ongoing without any works going on.
Builders and developers were worried about legal implications, liabilities. They were concerned about whether they could pay their suppliers, subcontractors, whether they could pay their main contractors. So the whole industry was on edge.
Because of all our collective efforts, we are now ready to exit the circuit breaker.
Finally, on the 2nd of June, there was an announcement that work could resume. So that was great. But it's not as if we can just go back and just start work.
There were all these different implications we had to work through. We had to think through in the context of a construction project, which typically there's a lot of intermingling amongst the workforce on any construction site. It's got multi-layers of contracting. You have the main con, the sub-cons, the specialist cons, contractors with their own team of workers who come in to do specific work. And this takes place throughout the day, throughout the life stage of a construction project.
We had to comply with many of the conditions imposed by BCA to ensure that the work sites are safe for the workers and that we can still continue to minimize infection among the workers.
As you see from all this documentation that took us lots of time to prepare and get ready to fight COVID. Here I show you something like this, implementation of a safe management work site. So these are all point site management officers and safe distancing officers. So we even have a support contact tracing system in place. You've got to be traceable at all times. And also regular checks and inspection from relevant authorities to ensure full compliance on site. With all these implementation, it took some time before we can start work accordingly.
Having had work stopped for quite some time, our developers, our agencies, our builders were very anxious to resume work, but they were concerned about safety as well. And so I recall vividly a call with then MND Minister Lawrence Wong. He called me and says, "Can you speak?" It was a very long call. We had a long discussion about how to go about restarting construction. So I had this group formed, a few subcontractors. They were very vocal. It was by Zoom. Every day at first, people were very frustrated. There was a lot of angst. We had to cool temperatures down. We had to assure people that we will work it out.
Construction for build-to-order public housing flat projects has restarted with the gradual lifting of circuit breaker measures, which stopped all work about 4 months ago.
Of course, we were quite relieved that work could start. But it's not quite back to normal because even though some of the Malaysian workers could start to come in, there weren't many. Because COVID was still ongoing, they'd rather stay with their families, right?
So a lot of work was carried out at a very low, slow pace. You having maybe 30% of your original workforce, and once you have one worker that is diagnosed with COVID, again the whole site gets locked down. Sometimes for 7 days, 10 days. So while we resume, we have the experience of site being locked down again.
Since your workers cannot be together, it slows the construction work. HDB has always managed to deliver all our flats by the legal completion date. But I think this time round, we knew that it was just impossible to do so.
I joined the government towards the end of July, early August of 2020. The atmosphere within the Manpower Ministry was actually quite tense. Obviously, because of the cluster that is ongoing within the dormitories. Before COVID in 2019, the number of migrant workers in construction was close to 300,000. During COVID itself, it dropped to about 230,000. So there was a drop of 20%. Now, the other thing is that there were also migrant workers who have gone back to their home countries. And the moment they went back to their home countries, the source countries also had their own lockdowns, didn't allow them to come back here to work. And then new migrant workers also couldn't come in.
Well, I think by now we realize that the delays are likely to mount to 6 to 9 months. And the implications, of course, is that many of my flat owners will not be able to take possession of their flats. They will be impacted in their planning, whether it's a marriage or trying to find alternative accommodation.
When construction resumed, we still face certain difficulties of getting the materials be delivered because there's a sudden surge of demand. Everyone is chasing for that small piece of cake.
With similar situations all across the world, that pent-up demand actually drove up prices of steel. Prices went up roughly about 50%. Pre-COVID, prices of steel was about 720 a ton. So after COVID, it reached about 1,270 per ton.
Well, I retired at the end of December 2020 as planned. Even when I stepped down as the CEO, I continue to track what's happening because I continue to be very concerned. And I knew the amount of effort that was needed to get ourselves back on track. And I make myself available to new leadership or anything I could do for HDB.
I was posted to HDB as CEO on the 26th of Feb 2021. That was a year into COVID, and all of Singapore were thinking about when we will emerge from COVID. So little did I know that COVID will continue to stay with HDB, and our building program will still be affected by COVID 4 years hence.
Malaysia is reimposing movement restrictions in its capital and surrounding areas.
Malaysia has extended its partial nationwide lockdown until February the 18th.
I recall in early part of 2021, there was the MCO2. It affected some of the precast supply that was produced in Malaysia. This was after the Delta variant reared its ugly head and was circulating quite quickly. It was a highly infectious strain. Majority of our construction workers come from South Asia. So when the Delta variant escalated in those countries and the manpower supply was cut off, it was a crisis for us in the middle of 2021.
When I first heard about South Asian ban, it's like, oh, here we go again. Are we going to face workers' resources issues?
This decision wasn't taken lightly, but it's very, very clear-cut because it's about protecting everyone who is within our border.
MCO2, the impact was slight initially, but it quickly escalated to MCO3. And at one point in time in MCO3, we are not getting any supply from Malaysia because the plants stopped operations. So from about 100 trucks a day, it was down to 0 for a period of about 2 months.
It's a complete blanket impact. Raw material, manpower costs, we have a limited pool of workers and everybody's trying to snatch. And in the process of this snatching workers, the cost of the workers has actually gone up many folds.
I think we've quickly pivoted to try to get our contractors to look for alternate supply of manpower.
Many of these other source countries, the workforce is at different levels of competence, different levels of training. We work with BCA for them to set up overseas training centers. So you could potentially then ensure that those people, they are up to speed in terms of their skill sets.
Because these are non-traditional sources and they will be more costly, we basically help co-fund some of the increased cost. So in that way, we try to secure alternate supply of construction workers. But we work with MTI together with the contractors who have good overseas contact in this whole government effort to secure green lane clearance for some of the workers from South Asia.
This was essentially to build a cocoon or a safe tunnel through which from source to Singapore. We were very sure that the workers, that if they stay within this cocoon, would be COVID-free. Task force I worked on, given zero infection case, that was the target given to them. Yes, we managed to hit it.
Malaysia has lifted most coronavirus restrictions after 3 months in lockdown.
Border controls are no longer relevant for Singapore as the pandemic situation in many other countries has stabilized.
When the South Asia ban and the MCO 3.0 was lifted in October 2021, construction was able to resume as per normal, but we are already expecting a delay.
Since 2021, the pandemic delayed projects. The bulk of them had a delay within the range of 6 months to about 12 months.
There were lots of feedback, lots of complaints, lots of unhappiness. We went to see their MPs. They spoke to HDB, so they wrote to me. But people across the board were resilient, they were understanding.
I think there were 2 projects, Waterway Sunrise 2 and Anchorview Village, where the final delivery was past the legal completion date. This is the first time that we have delivered projects that were delayed for more than a year. We have to pay liquidated damages to our buyers. It's not a good feeling. We hope that we could have delivered the projects to them earlier, but we give it our best, and paying the liquidated damages to them was the right thing to do.
We have been fighting the pandemic together for more than 3 years. So having reviewed the situation carefully, we have assessed that it is time to step down the remaining measures in Singapore and establish an endemic COVID new norm.
COVID has hit us and the delay is done, so we can't wind back the clock. The mission was for us to ensure there's no further delays and to deliver the projects to our buyers while ensuring quality and safety. I think there were several lessons learned from COVID. One is an agility mindset. Because we are in an unprecedented situation, every situation that arises is new. So we had to be innovative and come up with new solutions ourselves. We've done it before, which means that we can do it again.
I think what we learned from COVID is to diversify our materials, supply chain resilience, so that we can prevent all these delays when such situation arises again.
I was very relieved that we managed to keep many of the workers safe. So it's not just about the project, but it's also about the people. So if they were safe, that is very important for us because they help Singapore's development and also to deliver the flats to Singaporeans.
It's like recovering from long COVID. It's like having run a marathon when we started with no knowledge of how long it will be, how long it will last, what the route is, what are some barriers or obstacles along the way. You have no idea. But yet you know that you must finish the marathon. There is no option.